The stagecoach rattled into Angel's Camp, California, on a scorching August afternoon in 1872, carrying a woman whose eyes held more fear than hope. Clara Jennings pressed her gloved hand against the worn leather seat, steadying herself as the wheels bounced over the rutted Main Street, and she wondered if trading one nightmare for another was truly the best choice she could have made. The advertisement had seemed straightforward enough back in Boston. Respectable rancher seeking companionship, no prior attachments necessary, room and board provided in exchange for household duties and eventual marriage. What the carefully worded notice had not mentioned was whether the man would notice the marks she desperately tried to hide beneath high collars and strategically arranged hair. The rope burns on her neck were nearly 2 months old now, but they still ached when she turned her head too quickly. The pink and white scars formed an angry ring that no amount of powder could fully conceal. Clara touched the silk scarf at her throat reflexively, making sure it remained in place as the coach jolted to a stop outside the general store. Through the dusty window, she could see a handful of weathered buildings lining the street. A saloon, a blacksmith's forge, a hotel with peeling paint, and various storefronts that seemed to sag under the relentless California sun. "Angel's Camp," the driver called out, his voice rough from years of shouting over hoofbeats and rattling wheels. "End of the line, miss." Clara gathered her small carpetbag and the battered trunk that contained everything she owned in the world. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she accepted the driver's hand and stepped down onto the wooden sidewalk. Dust swirled around her dark green traveling dress, coating the hem with a layer of pale California dirt. She scanned the street, looking for the man who had sent for her, Logan Everett. The name had sounded strong in his letters, and his words had been kind without being overly familiar. He had written about his ranch 5 miles outside of town, about the cattle he raised and the modest house he had built with his own hands. He had promised her safety, a home, and the chance to start fresh. What he had not promised was to look at her the way the man now approaching did. Logan Everett was tall, perhaps 6 feet or more, with shoulders that spoke of years of hard labor. He wore a dark brown hat that shaded eyes the color of creek water after a storm, and his face was sun-bronzed and angular, with the kind of features that would have been handsome in any setting. But it was not his appearance that made Clara's breath catch. It was the way he moved toward her with purpose but without aggression, the way his expression shifted from anticipation to concern the moment their eyes met. "Miss Jennings." His voice was deeper than she had expected, with a warmth that did not match the wariness in his gaze. "Mr. Everett." Clara extended her hand, grateful that her glove hid the trembling of her fingers. "Thank you for meeting me." His handshake was firm but gentle, and he released her hand quickly, as though aware that a woman might not appreciate prolonged contact from a stranger. The ride must have been long. "Can I get you some water? Something to eat before we head to the ranch?" Water would be appreciated. Clara's throat was parched from the dust, and the anxiety that had been building since she left Boston 3 weeks ago. Logan gestured toward the general store behind them. "Let me get your trunk secured on my wagon first. It will only take a moment." Clara watched as he hefted her trunk with ease, his movements economical and practiced. He loaded it into a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses, then returned for her carpetbag. She noticed the way other townspeople watched them with open curiosity. A woman in a blue bonnet whispered to her companion, and 2 men outside the saloon paused their conversation to stare. Clara was used to being watched, but these stares felt different. There was no malice in them, only the natural interest of a small town observing something new. Inside the general store, Logan purchased 2 tin cups of water from the barrel near the counter and handed one to Clara. She drank gratefully, trying not to gulp despite her thirst. The shopkeeper, an older woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, smiled at her. "Welcome to Angel's Camp, dear. I am Martha Hayes. If you need anything for setting up house, we have got most everything you might require." "Thank you," Clara said softly. The kindness in the woman's voice made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. Logan finished his water and set the cup on the counter. "We should head out if you are ready. The afternoon heat will only get worse, and I would like to get you settled before supper." Clara nodded and followed him outside. He helped her onto the wagon seat with the same careful courtesy, then climbed up beside her. The horses started forward at his gentle command, and soon they were leaving the small town behind, following a road that wound through golden hills dotted with oak trees. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Clara kept one hand on her carpetbag and the other on the edge of the seat, watching the landscape roll past. The August heat was oppressive, making her long to loosen the scarf at her throat, but she did not dare. Not yet. Not until she understood what kind of man Logan Everett truly was. "The ranch is not fancy," Logan said finally, breaking the silence. "But it is solid. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a sitting room. The roof does not leak, and the stove works well enough. I have got about 200 head of cattle, and I hire help during roundup and branding season." "It sounds like you have built something good," Clara replied, meaning it. Anything would be better than what she had left behind. "I try." He paused, and she could feel his gaze on her. "Miss Jennings, I want you to know that I understand this arrangement is unusual. I do not expect anything from you beyond what we discussed in the letters. You will have your own room, and we can take whatever time you need to get comfortable before we talk about marriage." The relief that washed over Clara was so powerful that she had to blink back tears. "That is very kind of you. It is just decent." Logan's jaw tightened. "I know you came a long way, and I know you probably had your reasons for answering my advertisement. I will not pry into your past, and I hope you will extend me the same courtesy." "Of course." Clara hesitated, then added, "I appreciate your discretion." They continued in companionable silence until the wagon crested a small rise and Clara saw the ranch spread out before them. The house was indeed modest, a single-story structure built from wood that had weathered to a soft gray. A covered porch ran along the front, and there were window boxes that looked as though they had once held flowers but now contained only dry soil. Beyond the house stood a barn, several outbuildings, and a series of corrals where cattle grazed lazily in the afternoon heat. "It is not much to look at," Logan said, a note of apology in his voice. "It looks like home," Clara said, and she meant it. The isolation of the place, the distance from town, the quietness, all of it appealed to her in ways she could not fully explain. Here, perhaps, she could disappear into the landscape and forget what had happened in Boston. Logan helped her down from the wagon and carried her trunk into the house. The interior was clean but sparse, with furniture that looked handmade and functional rather than decorative. The kitchen held a cast iron stove, a sturdy table, and open shelves lined with dishes and preserved goods. The sitting room contained 2 chairs, a small bookshelf, and little else. "Your room is through here," Logan said, leading her down a short hallway. He pushed open a door to reveal a small bedroom with a single bed covered in a faded quilt, a wardrobe, and a washstand with a chipped porcelain basin. "It is not much, but the mattress is good, and the window catches the morning breeze." Clara set her carpetbag on the bed and turned to face him. "It is perfect. Thank you, Mr. Everett." "Logan," he corrected gently. "If we are going to share a house, formality seems unnecessary." "Logan," she repeated, testing the name. Then you should call me Clara, he nodded, then moved toward the door. I will let you get settled. I have got evening chores to finish, but I will start supper in about an hour. Do you cook? Yes. Clara had learned to cook out of necessity, though she had little love for it. Good. I am not terrible at it, but I would not call myself talented either. Logan paused in the doorway, his hand on the frame. Clara, I just want you to know that you are safe here. Whatever brought you west, whatever you are running from, it does not matter to me. This ranch is yours as much as it is mine now, and I give you my word that no harm will come to you while I am able to prevent it. The sincerity in his voice made Clara's eyes burn with unshed tears. She had not expected kindness. She had not expected a man who made promises without knowing what demons she carried. Thank you, she whispered. After Logan left, Clara sank onto the bed and allowed herself a moment of weakness. She removed her gloves and unpinned her hat, setting them carefully on the washstand. Then, with trembling fingers, she untied the scarf at her throat and looked at herself in the small mirror above the basin. The rope burns were still visible, angry pink lines that circled her neck like a grotesque necklace. The skin was healing, but slowly, and the scarring would likely be permanent. She traced the marks with her fingertips, remembering the night she had decided that death was preferable to one more day in Edgar Thornton's house. Edgar had been her employer, the wealthy industrialist who had hired her as a governess for his young children. For 6 months, Clara had lived in his Boston mansion, teaching his son and daughter their letters and numbers, reading to them before bed, taking them on walks through the city parks. Edgar's wife had died 2 years earlier, and he had seemed like a lonely, grieving man who simply wanted the best for his children. Clara had not realized until too late that Edgar wanted something else from her entirely. The first time he had cornered her in the hallway, she had convinced herself it was an accident. The second time, when his hand had grabbed her wrist and pulled her into his study, she had known better. He had offered her money, gifts, a better position in his household, all in exchange for her submission. When she had refused, his offers had turned to threats. He would ruin her reputation, he had said. He would ensure she never worked in Boston again. He would tell everyone that she had tried to seduce him, that she was a woman of loose morals. Still, Clara had refused. The night she had tried to leave, Edgar had followed her to her room. The confrontation had been brief and violent. He had grabbed the curtain cord from the window and wrapped it around her neck, tightening it until Clara's vision had blurred and her knees had buckled. He had whispered terrible things in her ear, things about what he would do to her if she ever tried to leave again. Then, suddenly, he had released her, letting her fall to the floor gasping and sobbing. "You are mine," he had said coldly, "and you will do as I say, or next time I will not stop." Clara had waited until Edgar left for a business trip the following week. She had taken her meager savings, packed her few belongings, and fled Boston on the first train heading west. The advertisement for a mail-order bride had been in a newspaper she had found discarded in the station, and she had responded to it from a town in Indiana, too afraid to use a Boston postmark. Now, standing in this small bedroom in California, Clara wondered if she had truly escaped or merely postponed the inevitable. Could Logan look at these marks and still see her as anything other than damaged goods? Would he demand answers she was not ready to give? A knock on the door startled her from her thoughts. Clara quickly retied the scarf around her neck, making sure it covered the burns completely. "Yes, supper will be ready soon," Logan called through the closed door. "No rush, but I wanted to let you know. I will be right there." Clara smoothed her hair and checked her appearance in the mirror one last time. She looked pale and tired, but presentable. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door and made her way to the kitchen. Logan stood at the stove, stirring something in a large pot. The smell of beef stew filled the small house, and Clara's stomach growled in response. She had not realized how hungry she was until that moment. "Can I help?" she asked. "You can set the table if you would like." Logan gestured toward the shelves where plates and utensils were stored. Nothing fancy, just bowls and spoons. They worked in silence, moving around each other with the awkwardness of strangers sharing a small space. When the stew was ready, Logan ladled generous portions into their bowls and they sat down at the table. Clara bowed her head automatically, waiting for a blessing, and was surprised when Logan did the same. "For this food and this company we are grateful," he said simply. "Amen." "Amen," Clara echoed. The stew was simple but good, thick with vegetables and chunks of tender beef. Clara ate slowly, savoring each bite. Across from her, Logan ate with the practical efficiency of a man used to eating alone. "How long have you lived here?" Clara asked, wanting to break the silence. "5 years. I came out from Missouri after the war. Worked as a ranch hand for a few years, saved my money, and bought this land from a prospector who decided he would rather try his luck in Nevada." Logan set down his spoon. "It has been a lot of work, but it is mine. That matters to me. I can understand that." Clara took a sip of water. "Owning something that no one can take from you." Logan's gaze sharpened. "Exactly." They continued eating, and Clara felt some of the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Logan was not pressing her for information, was not demanding anything beyond polite conversation. Perhaps this arrangement could work after all. After supper, Clara insisted on washing the dishes while Logan went to check on the animals one more time. Alone in the kitchen, she allowed herself to imagine what life might be like here. She could cook and clean, tend a garden, perhaps even learn to help with some of the ranch work. It would be hard but honest work. And Logan seemed like an honest man. When Logan returned, he found Clara drying the last of the dishes. "You did not have to do all that tonight," he said. "You must be exhausted from traveling." "I am tired," Clara admitted, "but I wanted to be useful." "You do not have to earn your place here, Clara." Logan's voice was gentle. "You already have it." The kindness in his words nearly undid her. Clara set down the dish towel and turned away, blinking rapidly. "I think I will turn in for the night if you do not mind." "Of course. Sleep as late as you need tomorrow. There is no schedule you have to follow." Clara bid him good night and retreated to her room. She changed into her nightgown, braided her hair, and slipped between the clean sheets of her new bed. Through the window, she could hear the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. The occasional lowing of cattle, the chirp of crickets, the whisper of wind through the oak trees. It was so different from the sounds of Boston, the clatter of carriages, the shouts of vendors, the constant hum of humanity pressed together in narrow streets. Here, she might find peace. Clara woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through her window and the smell of coffee brewing. She dressed quickly, choosing a simple calico dress and making sure her scarf was properly arranged before leaving her room. In the kitchen, she found Logan already up, frying eggs on the stove. "Good morning," he said when he saw her. "I hope I did not wake you." "Not at all. What time is it?" "A little past 6. I am usually up before dawn, but I tried to be quiet this morning." Logan slid 2 eggs onto a plate and handed it to her. "There is bread in the box there and butter in the cold cellar." They ate breakfast together, and afterward Logan showed Clara around the ranch properly. He introduced her to his horses, 2 sturdy geldings named Buck and Sam, and walked her through the barn where he stored hay and equipment. He pointed out the chicken coop, which held a dozen hens, and explained his system for collecting eggs. "The cattle mostly take care of themselves this time of year," Logan said as they stood by the nearest corral. but I check on them daily, make sure none are injured or sick. In the fall, I will drive them to market in Sacramento." "You make the drive alone?" Clara asked. "Usually I hire a couple of men to help. It is a week's journey each way, sometimes longer depending on the weather." Logan glanced at her. "I have been trying to figure out what to do about that this year with you here." "I will be fine alone," Clara said quickly. "I am not afraid of solitude." "It is not about fear. I just do not like the idea of leaving you isolated for 2 weeks." Logan pushed his hat back. "But we have got time to figure it out. The drive is not until October." They walked back toward the house, and Clara found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the ranch. There was something soothing about the simplicity of it all, the clear delineation of tasks and responsibilities. Here, she did not have to navigate the complexities of a wealthy household or guard against unwanted advances. She could simply exist. Over the following days, Clara and Logan fell into a routine. She took over the cooking and most of the household chores, while Logan managed the livestock and the heavier work around the property. They shared meals and conversation, learning each other's preferences and habits. Logan liked his coffee strong and black. Clara preferred tea when they had it. Logan was an early riser who believed in getting work done before the heat of the day. Clara was naturally more inclined to stay up late, but she adapted to his schedule. What surprised Clara most was how comfortable she felt around Logan. He never crowded her, never touched her without reason, and never asked intrusive questions about her past. He told her stories about his time in the war, though he glossed over the worst parts, and about his early days in California when he had been young and foolish and broke. He made her laugh with tales of his failed attempts at cooking, and his ongoing battle with a persistent coyote that kept trying to get into the chicken coop. In turn, Clara shared carefully edited stories about her childhood in Pennsylvania, about the parents she had lost to fever when she was 16, about the various jobs she had taken to support herself. She did not mention Boston or Edgar Thornton, and Logan did not press. But the scarf remained always around her neck, even on the hottest days. Clara wore it like armor, a necessary shield between herself and the world. She told herself that Logan had not noticed, that he simply assumed she was modest or protecting her skin from the sun. But sometimes she caught him looking at her throat with an expression she could not quite read, and she wondered what he was thinking. 3 weeks after Clara's arrival, the heat broke with a sudden thunderstorm that rolled in from the west. Clara was in the kitchen preparing supper when the first drops began to fall. Within minutes, rain was pounding against the roof and lightning was splitting the darkening sky. Logan came running in from the barn, soaked through and laughing. "Forgot how hard it rains out here," he said, pulling off his hat and shaking water from his hair. "This is going to be a good one." Clara handed him a towel. "You should change before you catch cold." "Yes, madam." Logan disappeared into his room and emerged a few minutes later in dry clothes. "That smells good. What are you making?" "Chicken and dumplings. I found the recipe in that old cookbook on your shelf." Clara stirred the pot, pleased with how the dish was turning out. "It should be ready soon." They ate supper while the storm raged outside, the sound of rain on the roof creating a cozy atmosphere. After the meal, Logan built a fire in the sitting room fireplace to chase away the sudden chill, and they sat together, Clara in one chair with some mending and Logan in the other with a book. It was peaceful, domestic, and so different from anything Clara had known that she felt tears prick her eyes. This was what she had hoped for when she answered Logan's advertisement. A quiet life, a safe place, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than power and control. "Clara," Logan said suddenly, setting down his book, "Can I ask you something?" Her hand stilled on the shirt she was mending. "Of course." "Are you happy here? I mean, is this what you expected when you came west?" Clara considered the question carefully. "I did not know what to expect. But yes, I am happy. Happier than I have been in a long time." "Good." Logan's expression softened. "I am glad. You have made a real difference here, you know. The house feels like a home now instead of just a place to sleep." The compliment warmed Clara more than the fire. "Thank you. You have been very kind to me, Logan, more than I had any right to expect." "You have every right to expect kindness." Logan's voice took on an edge she had not heard before. "Any man who does not treat a woman with respect is not worth knowing." Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, to unburden herself of the secret she carried. But fear held her tongue. What if he looked at her differently once he knew? What if he blamed her for what had happened, the way Edgar had blamed her for his own lack of control? The moment passed, and they returned to their respective activities. But Clara could not shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. Logan had stopped being simply a means of escape and was becoming something more, something that scared and excited her in equal measure. The following Sunday, Logan suggested they attend church services in town. Clara agreed, though she felt nervous about being seen in public as Logan's intended bride. She dressed carefully in her best dress, a deep blue cotton with white lace at the collar, and made sure her scarf was securely in place. The ride into Angel's camp took less than an hour, and soon they were pulling up outside a small white church with a modest steeple. Other wagons and horses were already there, and Clara could see families gathering on the steps, greeting each other with smiles and handshakes. Logan helped her down and offered his arm. "Most folks are friendly enough," he said quietly, "but small towns can be curious about newcomers. Just smile and be yourself." Clara took his arm and let him lead her toward the church. Several people approached to introduce themselves. The minister, Reverend Caleb Thompson, and his wife Sarah, a rancher named Bill Crawford and his family, Martha Hayes from the general store with her husband George. Everyone was polite and welcoming, though Clara could feel their curiosity like a physical weight. The service was simple and heartfelt, with hymns sung in earnest voices and a sermon about grace and forgiveness. Clara found herself moved by the minister's words, by the idea that people could start over, that past mistakes did not have to define the future. When they sang the final hymn, she felt tears running down her cheeks and quickly wiped them away, hoping no one had noticed. After the service, several of the women invited Clara to join their quilting circle, which met every other Wednesday afternoon in town. Clara thanked them and promised to consider it, though she was not sure she was ready for that level of social interaction. On the ride home, Logan was quiet. Clara glanced at him several times, wondering what he was thinking. Finally, she could not stand the silence any longer. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. Logan looked at her in surprise. "Wrong? No, of course not. Why would you think that? You have been quiet since we left church." "I thought perhaps I embarrassed you somehow." "Clara, no." Logan pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her fully. "You could never embarrass me. I was just thinking about what the minister said, about forgiveness and second chances. It made me realize how little I know about you, about what brought you here." Clara's heart began to race. "I told you I would not pry into your past if you extended me the same courtesy. I know, and I meant it. But I also want you to know that if you ever want to talk about it, I am here. Whatever it is, whatever happened, it would not change how I see you." Logan's gray-green eyes were steady and kind. "You are a good woman, Clara. I can see that. And I would count myself lucky if you decided to stay here permanently as my wife." The proposal, casual and sincere, took Clara's breath away. "Logan, You do not have to answer now," he said quickly. "Take whatever time you need. I just wanted you to know that I am not looking at this as a temporary arrangement anymore. I care about you, Clara, more than I expected to." Clara's hands trembled in her lap. She wanted to say yes, wanted to accept the safety and kindness he offered. But how could she, when she was still hiding such a fundamental truth from him? "Can I think about it?" she asked softly. "Of course." Logan picked up the reins again and clicked to the horses. "Take all the time you need." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now, charged with unspoken feelings and possibilities. When they reached the ranch, Clara excused herself to her room, claiming a headache. In truth, she needed space to think, to decide what to do. She sat on her bed and stared at her reflection in the small mirror. The scarf around her neck seemed to mock her, a constant reminder of everything she was trying to hide. Could she really build a life with Logan while keeping such a significant secret? And yet, how could she reveal the truth without risking everything she had found here? That evening, Clara stayed in her room, claiming she still felt unwell. Logan brought her a tray with soup and bread, setting it on her washstand with a gentle reminder to call if she needed anything. His concern only made her feel worse. Clara barely slept that night. She tossed and turned, replaying Logan's words over and over in her mind. He cared about her. He wanted to marry her. He had promised that nothing in her past would change how he saw her. Could she trust that promise? By dawn, she had made her decision. She could not build a life based on deception. If Logan was going to be her husband, he deserved to know the truth. And if the truth drove him away, then it was better to know now than after she had fallen even more deeply for him. Clara waited until after breakfast, until the morning chores were done and they had the house to themselves. She found Logan in the barn, repairing a broken halter, and stood in the doorway gathering her courage. "Logan, can we talk?" He set down his tools immediately. "Of course. Is everything all right? I need to tell you something." Clara's voice shook despite her best efforts to sound calm. "About why I came here. About what I have been hiding from you." Logan's expression grew serious. "All right. Let us go sit on the porch. It is cooler there." They walked back to the house together, and Clara sat in one of the chairs on the porch while Logan leaned against the railing facing her. She took a deep breath, her hands clenched together in her lap. "I was not entirely truthful with you about my reasons for leaving Boston," she began. "I did not come west just for a fresh start. I was running away from something, from someone." Logan did not speak, just waited for her to continue. "I was working as a governess for a wealthy man named Edgar Thornton. He had 2 young children who had lost their mother, and he needed someone to care for them and oversee their education. For months, everything was fine. But then he started to notice me differently. He made advances, and when I refused him, he became angry. He told me that I owed him, that he had given me employment and a place to live, and I should be grateful." Clara's voice broke, and she had to pause to collect herself. Logan's hands were gripping the porch railing so hard his knuckles had turned white, but he remained silent. "I tried to leave," Clara continued. "I packed my things one night when he was out, planning to take the first train in the morning, but he came home early and found me. He was furious. He told me that I belonged to him, that I had no right to leave without his permission. And then her hands went to the scarf at her throat. With trembling fingers, she untied it and let it fall away, exposing the rope burns that circled her neck like a terrible brand. Logan's sharp intake of breath was audible even over the morning sounds of the ranch. He pushed away from the railing and crossed to her in 2 strides, dropping to his knees in front of her chair. His eyes were fixed on her neck, on the still pink scars that told their own story of violence and terror. "He did this to you." Logan's voice was low and dangerous, barely controlled. Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. He said he would kill me if I tried to leave again. I waited until he went away on business, and then I ran. I took everything I had saved and I just ran. I saw your advertisement in a newspaper at a train station, and I thought it might be my only chance to get far enough away that he could not find me. Logan reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. When she did not, he gently touched the edge of one of the scars with his fingertips. The gesture was so tender, so careful that Clara broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. "I am sorry," she gasped. "I should have told you sooner. I should have been honest from the beginning. I understand if you want me to leave. I can find work in town or I can go somewhere else. I will not hold you to our arrangement." "Clara, look at me." Logan's voice was firm but gentle. When she lowered her hands and met his eyes, she was stunned by the emotion she saw there. Not disgust or disappointment, but fury and compassion mingled together. "You are not going anywhere. Do you hear me? This is your home and you are safe here. But the scars, the scandal if anyone finds out, I do not care about any of that." Logan's hands moved to cradle her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "What happened to you was not your fault. That man, Edgar Thornton, is a monster, and if he ever sets foot in California, he will answer to me. But you, Clara, you are one of the bravest people I have ever met. You survived. You escaped. You came all the way across the country alone to build a new life. How could I be anything but in awe of you?" Clara could not speak through her tears. She had expected judgment, blame, rejection. Instead, Logan was offering her acceptance and protection, looking at her as though she were something precious rather than something damaged. "I meant what I said yesterday," Logan continued. "I care about you, Clara. These scars do not change that. If anything, they make me realize how much I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to fear anyone again. You deserve to be cherished, not hurt. You deserve kindness and respect and love." "Love," Clara whispered. Logan smiled, and it transformed his face from serious to something almost boyish. "Yes, love. I think I have been falling in love with you since the day you arrived. Maybe even before that, when I was reading your letters and imagining what you might be like. You are smart and strong and kind, and you make this house feel like more than just walls and a roof. You make it a home." Clara touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw with her fingertips. "I care about you too," she admitted. "More than I thought possible in such a short time. But I am afraid, Logan. I am afraid that I am too broken to be a proper wife to you. You are not broken." Logan turned his head to press a kiss to her palm. "You are healing, and I will be here every step of the way for as long as you will have me." "Then yes," Clara said, her voice growing stronger. "Yes, I will marry you. I will stay here and build a life with you if that is still what you want." "It is all I want." Logan stood and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that felt like coming home. Clara rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and for the first time since that terrible night in Boston, she felt truly safe. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other on the porch while the morning sun climbed higher in the sky and the cattle grazed peacefully in the distance. When they finally pulled apart, Logan kept one arm around Clara's shoulders, as though reluctant to let her go completely. "We should go into town this week and talk to Reverend Thompson," Logan said. "Get the marriage properly arranged, unless you want to wait longer." "No," Clara said. "I do not want to wait. I have spent too much of my life being afraid. I am ready to start living again." Logan kissed her forehead, a chaste and tender gesture that still made Clara's heart race. "Then we will go tomorrow. And Clara, you do not have to hide those scars anymore. Not from me, and not from anyone else if you do not want to. Wear them proudly, as evidence that you survived and came out stronger. Clara touched her bare throat, feeling the ridges of scar tissue beneath her fingers. The idea of going without the scarf was terrifying, but also liberating. She had been hiding for so long, ashamed of marks that were not her fault. Perhaps Logan was right. Perhaps it was time to stop hiding and start truly living. The next day, they rode into Angel's camp together and met with Reverend Thompson. The minister listened to their request, asked a few questions about their intentions and understanding of marriage, and then agreed to perform the ceremony the following Sunday after regular services. Clara expected some gossip or speculation, but the people of Angel's camp seemed genuinely happy for them. Martha Hayes insisted on providing cake for the reception, and several other women offered to help Clara make a new dress for the occasion. Clara decided to take them up on the offer. She had never had many female friends, and the idea of being part of a community was appealing. She attended the next quilting circle, where she met more of the local women and listened to their cheerful chatter about children and recipes and the upcoming harvest festival. No one asked intrusive questions about her past or stared at her neck, though she had chosen to wear a high-collared dress rather than expose the scars in public just yet. The week before the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Logan worked to finish several projects around the ranch, wanting everything in good order before they became husband and wife. Clara worked with Martha and the other women to sew a simple but beautiful dress in cream-colored cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. She also began to envision what changes she might make to the house, small touches that would make it feel more like theirs rather than just his. On Saturday evening, the night before the wedding, Clara stood in her bedroom doorway looking at Logan across the sitting room. He was reading by lamplight, his profile peaceful and handsome in the golden glow. As though sensing her gaze, he looked up and smiled. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Not at all." Clara crossed the room and sat in the chair beside his. "I was just thinking about how much my life has changed in 2 months. In Boston, I thought I would die in that house. I could not see a way forward, could not imagine ever feeling safe or happy again. And now here I am, about to marry a good man and start a life I never dreamed possible." Logan set down his book and took her hand. "I feel the same way. This ranch has been my whole world for 5 years, and it was enough. But now that you are here, I cannot imagine going back to the way things were. You have changed everything, Clara." They sat together in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the fire burn down to embers. Clara felt a sense of peace settle over her, a certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The wedding took place on a clear September morning with a gentle breeze that carried the scent of dry grass and oak trees. Clara wore her new dress and, in a moment of courage, left her scarf behind. Her hair was arranged in a simple style that did not hide her neck, and though she felt exposed at first, the supportive smiles of the women around her gave her strength. Logan wore a new shirt and vest, his dark hair neatly combed and his boots polished to a shine. When Clara walked down the short aisle to stand beside him, the look in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. He saw her, truly saw her, scars and all, and loved what he saw. Reverend Thompson conducted a simple ceremony, speaking about love and commitment, about the sanctity of marriage and the importance of mutual respect. When he asked Logan if he would take Clara as his wife, to honor and cherish her all the days of his life, Logan's "I do" was firm and clear. When the minister asked Clara the same question, she looked into Logan's gray-green eyes and felt her future stretching out before her, full of possibility and hope. "I do," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They exchanged simple gold bands, and when Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Logan kissed Clara gently, a promise of tenderness and devotion. The small congregation applauded, and Clara felt tears of joy streaming down her face. The reception was held in the church hall, with cake and lemonade and much good-natured teasing of the newlyweds. Clara found herself laughing more than she had in years, surrounded by friendly faces and genuine warmth. These people had accepted her, welcomed her into their community without judgment or suspicion. She belonged here in a way she had never belonged anywhere else. As the sun began to set, Logan and Clara said their goodbyes and climbed into the wagon for the ride home. The ranch looked beautiful in the golden evening light, and Clara felt a surge of affection for the modest house and the rolling hills that surrounded it. Logan helped her down from the wagon, and then, in a gesture that made Clara's heart soar, he swept her into his arms and carried her across the threshold. Inside, he set her down gently and cupped her face in his hands. "Welcome home, Mrs. Everett," he said softly. "I have been home since the day I arrived," Clara replied. "I just did not know it yet." They kissed again, longer and deeper this time, and Clara felt the last of her fear melt away. This man, this place, this life, it was everything she had hoped for and more. That night, they truly became husband and wife, and Logan's tenderness erased the last shadows of Edgar Thornton's violence. He treated Clara as though she were made of something precious, asking permission before each touch, making sure she felt safe and loved. Afterward, they lay together in the darkness of Logan's room, their room now, and talked about their plans for the future. "I want to expand the herd next year," Logan said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on Clara's shoulder. "Maybe add another 100 head if the prices stay good. And I have been thinking about building an addition to the house, maybe a proper dining room and another bedroom or two." "For children?" Clara asked, a note of hope in her voice. "If we are blessed with them, yes." Logan pulled her closer. "I would like that, would you? Very much." Clara had always wanted children, had loved her time as a governess despite how it had ended. The idea of raising a family with Logan, in this safe and peaceful place, filled her with joy. The months that followed were the happiest of Clara's life. She and Logan settled into married life with ease, their partnership strengthening with each passing day. They worked side by side on the ranch, Logan teaching Clara how to ride properly and how to help with basic cattle work. Clara transformed the house, adding curtains she sewed herself, planting flowers in the window boxes, filling the shelves with preserves she made from fruit she bought in town or gathered from wild trees on their property. In October, Logan made his cattle drive to Sacramento, and this time he took Clara with him. She rode alongside him and the two hired hands, learning the rhythms of moving a herd across country. The journey was long and sometimes difficult, but Clara loved every moment of it, loved the freedom of sleeping under the stars and the satisfaction of reaching their destination. In Sacramento, while Logan conducted his business, Clara explored the growing city with its bustling streets and diverse population. She bought fabric for new dresses and supplies for the ranch, and she and Logan stayed in a hotel for 2 nights, enjoying the novelty of sleeping in a proper bed with sheets that someone else had laundered. On the journey home, Logan told Clara that the cattle had brought a good price, better than he had expected. "We are in good shape for the winter," he said, "and I think we can afford to hire someone to help with that addition to the house come spring." Clara smiled, one hand resting on her stomach where she suspected, though it was too early to be certain, that a new life was beginning. She decided to wait another month before sharing her suspicion with Logan, not wanting to get his hopes up if she was wrong. Winter came to the California foothills with cold rains and occasional frost, but nothing like the harsh winters Clara had known in Pennsylvania and Massachusetts. She and Logan spent the short days working on indoor projects and the long evenings reading, talking, and making plans. Clara joined the quilting circle regularly and developed genuine friendships with several of the women in town. She felt part of something larger than herself, connected to a community in a way that gave her life new meaning. By January, Clara was certain about the baby. Her monthly courses had stopped, and she felt a persistent queasiness in the mornings that had nothing to do with anything she had eaten. She waited for the perfect moment to tell Logan, and it came on a cold evening when they were sitting by the fire, his arm around her shoulders. "Logan, I have something to tell you," she said softly. He looked at her with immediate concern. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong, quite the opposite." Clara took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "I think we are going to have a baby, in late summer if my calculations are correct." The expression on Logan's face was something Clara would treasure forever. Shock gave way to joy and then to wonder. "A baby? Clara, are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without seeing a doctor, but all the signs are there." Clara smiled. "How do you feel about becoming a father?" Logan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "Like the luckiest man alive. Clara, you have given me everything. A home, a purpose, and now a family. I do not know what I did to deserve you. You saw me," Clara said simply. "When I was at my lowest, when I was just trying to survive. You saw me for who I really was, and you offered me kindness without asking for anything in return. That is what you did to deserve this." They held each other for a long time, talking about names and nurseries and all the preparations they would need to make. Clara felt a contentment so deep, it was almost painful, a happiness she had never expected to find. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the winter and into spring. Logan became even more protective of Clara, insisting she rest more and do less heavy work. He hired a local boy to help with chores so Clara would not overtax herself, and he began work on the house addition with a renewed sense of urgency. The new rooms took shape quickly, built with care and attention to detail. In late August, on a hot afternoon when the cicadas were singing in the oak trees, Clara went into labor. Logan rode to town to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Helen Morris who had delivered dozens of babies in Angel's Camp and the surrounding area. Helen arrived calm and competent, and she guided Clara through the long hours of labor with encouragement and practical advice. Logan stayed by Clara's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, and whispering words of love and support. When the baby finally arrived just before dawn, filling the house with strong, healthy cries, Logan wept openly. "It is a boy," Helen announced, placing the cleaned and wrapped infant in Clara's arms. "A fine, healthy boy." Clara looked down at her son's tiny face, at his shock of dark hair and his gray-green eyes that were so much like his father's, and felt her heart expand in ways she had not known possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Welcome to the world." Logan leaned over her shoulder, one arm around Clara and one finger gently touching the baby's cheek. "He is perfect. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months, but had never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at her son, Clara knew exactly what felt right. "What about James? After your father," Logan's eyes filled with fresh tears. "James Everett, I like that. I like that very much." James proved to be a good baby, nursing well and sleeping in reasonable stretches. Clara discovered that motherhood came naturally to her, and she loved every aspect of caring for her son, even the exhausting parts. Logan was a devoted father, taking every opportunity to hold James, talking to him constantly, and showing him around the ranch as though the infant could understand what he was seeing. The people of Angel's Camp rallied around the new family, bringing meals and baby clothes and offering advice and support. Clara felt embraced by the community in a way that healed old wounds she had not even realized were still bleeding. By the time James was 6 months old, Clara felt ready to share more of her story. She had kept the details of her past mostly to herself, even from the women she had grown close to, but she felt it was time to be fully honest about where she had come from and what she had survived. She chose to speak about it during one of the quilting circle meetings, when the conversation had turned to the topic of hardship and perseverance. Clara told them about Boston, about Edgar Thornton, about the rope burns on her neck that she no longer bothered to hide. She told them about her fear and her flight west, and about how Logan had seen past her scars to the woman beneath. The room was silent when she finished, and for a moment, Clara worried that she had made a mistake. But then Martha Hayes crossed the room and pulled Clara into a fierce hug. "You are one of the strongest women I know," Martha said. "Thank you for trusting us with your story." The other women murmured their agreement, and several shared their own stories of hardship and survival. Clara realized that everyone carried scars of some kind, visible or not, and that sharing those stories created bonds that went beyond casual friendship. Years passed, full and rich with the rhythms of ranch life and family. James grew into a sturdy, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, and pestered Clara with endless questions about everything from why the sky was blue to where cattle came from. When James was 3, Clara gave birth to a daughter they named Lily, a dark-haired beauty with Clara's blue eyes and Logan's stubborn chin. 2 years after that came another son, Thomas, who was quieter than his siblings but just as loved. The ranch prospered under Logan's careful management. He expanded the herd as planned, built more outbuildings, and developed a reputation for raising quality cattle. Clara established a large garden that provided vegetables for the family and surplus to sell in town. Together, they built a life that was both prosperous and deeply satisfying. Clara never heard from Edgar Thornton again. She sometimes wondered if he had looked for her, or if he had simply moved on to terrorize some other poor woman. She hoped, for the sake of any woman who might have crossed his path, that he had faced some form of justice. But whether he had or not, he no longer had any power over her. She had survived him, built a new life, and found a love that healed rather than harmed. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Clara with a gift. He had commissioned a photograph of their family from a traveling photographer who had set up shop in Angel's Camp for a week. The whole family dressed in their best clothes and sat for the portrait, Logan and Clara in the center, surrounded by their 3 children. When the photograph was developed and delivered, Clara studied it carefully. There was Logan, his face more weathered than when they had met but still handsome and strong. There were the children, bright-eyed and full of life. And there was Clara herself, looking confident and content, her neck visible in the photograph with its faint scars barely noticeable in the black and white image. "You are beautiful," Logan said, looking over her shoulder at the photograph. "Then, now, always." Clara turned to kiss her husband, this man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and had chosen love over judgment. "And you are the best thing that ever happened to me." They hung the photograph in the parlor of their expanded house, a testament to everything they had built together. Clara would sometimes pause in her work to look at it, marveling at how far she had come from that terrified woman who had stepped off the stagecoach in Angel's Camp so many years ago. The children grew, as children do. James eventually took over more and more of the ranch work, showing his father's aptitude for cattle and land management. Lily developed a talent for drawing and painting, filling the house with her artistic creations. Thomas discovered a love of books and learning, and Logan and Clara saved diligently to send him to a school in Sacramento. As Clara grew older, she became something of a matriarch in Angel's Camp. Women came to her for advice and support, knowing that she would listen without judgment and offer wisdom earned through hard experience. She became an advocate for women in difficult situations, quietly helping those who needed to escape bad circumstances, drawing on her own memories of desperation and fear. Logan aged beside her, his hair going gray and his steps slowing, but his love for Clara never diminished. They remained partners in the truest sense, sharing the work and the joys of their life together. On cool evenings, they would sit on their porch and watch the sunset over the California hills, hands linked, content in the life they had built. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been like if you had not answered my advertisement?" Logan asked one evening, his voice contemplative. Clara considered the question. "Sometimes, but I try not to dwell on it. What matters is that I did answer, and that you saw something in me worth cherishing. Everything good in my life stems from that choice and from your kindness." "It was not kindness," Logan said. "It was recognition. I saw someone who needed a safe place, and I needed someone to share my life with." "We needed each other, Clara. That is what made it work." Clara squeezed his hand. "We still need each other." "Always," Logan agreed. When Clara was in her 50s, she received an unexpected letter. It came from a lawyer in Boston informing her that Edgar Thornton had died. The letter went on to explain that several women had come forward after his death with allegations of abuse and assault, and that his estate was being divided among his victims as restitution. Clara's share was substantial, enough to ensure that her children and grandchildren would have opportunities she had never dreamed possible. Clara read the letter several times, trying to process the information. Edgar was dead. He could never hurt her or anyone else again. The relief she felt was profound, mixed with a deep sadness for the other women who had suffered at his hands. She showed the letter to Logan, who read it with a grim expression. "I am glad he faced some consequences, even if they came too late. What do you want to do with the money?" Clara thought about it for several days. Finally, she decided to use part of it to establish a fund to help women leaving difficult situations, providing them with the resources to start new lives. The rest she divided among her children, wanting them to have the security and opportunities she had fought so hard to achieve. The fund became Clara's legacy, helping dozens of women over the years. She worked with churches and charities across California, creating a network of support for those who needed it most. It gave her deep satisfaction to know that her suffering had not been in vain, that she could use her experience to help others find the same safety and healing she had found. Logan supported her work wholeheartedly, often contributing his own time and resources to the cause. He told everyone who would listen that his wife was a remarkable woman, a survivor who had transformed her pain into purpose. Clara would blush at his praise, but she could not deny the truth of it. She had survived, and she had thrived, and now she was helping others do the same. As they entered their 60s, Logan and Clara slowed down, handing over more of the ranch operations to James and his wife. They spent their days in quieter pursuits, tending Clara's ever-expanding garden, reading, receiving visits from their children and growing number of grandchildren. The house that had once seemed so modest now rang with the laughter of multiple generations. One evening in early autumn, when the air had just begun to carry a hint of chill, and the oak leaves were starting to turn gold, Clara and Logan sat on their porch watching the sun set over the ranch. Clara rested her head on Logan's shoulder, feeling the familiar comfort of his presence. "I have been thinking," Logan said quietly, "about everything we have been through, everything we have built. I want you to know that I would not change a single moment. Not the hard times, not the struggles, not even the scares, because all of it led us here to this life we have together." Clara lifted her head to look at him. His face was lined with age, his hair nearly white, but his eyes still held the same kindness and strength that had drawn her to him so many years ago. "I feel the same way," she said. "When I came to Angel's camp, I thought I was just running away from something. But I was really running toward you, toward this life, toward everything I never knew I could have." "No regrets?" Logan asked. "Not a single one," Clara smiled. "Well, maybe one. I regret that I did not trust you with the truth sooner. I wasted time being afraid when I could have been simply loving you." Logan kissed her forehead. "You told me when you were ready. That is all that matters." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Clara thought about the girl she had been when she arrived in California, broken and terrified and desperate. She thought about the woman she had become, strong and loved and purposeful. The journey between those two versions of herself had been long and sometimes painful, but it had been worth every step. "Thank you," Clara said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For promising I would never hurt again. For keeping that promise every single day for 30 years. Clara's voice caught with emotion. "For loving me when I could not love myself." Logan pulled her close, and they watched the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I have ever done," he said. "You made it easy by being exactly who you are." As night fell over the ranch, Clara felt a profound sense of gratitude for the life she had been given. She had survived the worst that one human could do to another, and she had found her way to a love that healed and sustained her. She had built a family, a community, a legacy. She had transformed scars into symbols of strength rather than shame. The rope burns on her neck had faded over the years, becoming pale lines that were barely visible unless you knew to look for them. But Clara never forgot they were there. They reminded her of where she had been and how far she had come. They reminded her that survival was possible, that healing was real, and that love could conquer even the darkest of pasts. As she sat on the porch with Logan, surrounded by the ranch they had built together and the life they had created, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she had found what she had been searching for when she stepped off that stagecoach so many years ago. She had found home. She had found safety. She had found love. And she had found herself, stronger and more whole than she had ever imagined possible. The cowboy had seen her scars and promised she would never hurt again. And he had kept that promise every single day for the rest of their lives together.